Wow, 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 wow. David's late. If you're not early, you're late. There he is. There he is. So dependable. Definition of reliable. Philosophy and theology. Tonight, mostly philosophy, but we'll tie it into the theology. Evening fam, I was almost late. Cows and hogs came up out of the woods late for supper. They all refused to reset their hoof watches to daylight savings time. Love y'all. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. How many are there, David? Like, what is the total count? What is the absolute count of hoofed peoples that live with you or around you, I suppose? Tampa, I just threw you up. You should be good. If you're watching this later, we have a Discord. There's a link to the Discord pinned to the top of the live chat. There's a link to the Discord in the description of the video. It is free. It will always be free. Just a bunch of people who like talking about weird stuff. Mostly religious stuff, but probably not in the way you're thinking about. Every Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, we do Bible study of some fashion on @Live Bible Study on YouTube. Right now, Book of Giants / Enoch, the Gospel of Judas on Saturday, and then the Book of Job on Sunday. Then every Tuesday, we do a random topic, basically, usually voted upon or at least talked about on a live stream prior to it happening. Tonight is philosophy, because we find ourselves talking about it often, I guess, and it's kind of intermingled with everything else we talk about. So we figure run through kind of the basics of it, and then we'll tie it into theology as well. Hashtag hoof watches. Daylight savings time is something that I hope Trump does away with. If there's one thing I hope he does, get rid of this. This is shenanigans. What a worthless, confusing, overly complex thing that doesn't apply to today's world at all. I get why it was a thing previously. I don't get why it's a thing now. I don't think it serves any purpose whatsoever. Bye-bye daylight savings time. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. Everybody says daylight savings time is worthless. It's what everybody tells him. It's what everybody should tell him. Hey, Ruth. 5 longhorns, David said. 52 baby hogs. Bro. 30 sows? That's... I'm so uncultured, dude. That's pigs, right? It's sows. How do you say that? Somebody typed the pronunciation for my dumb ass.
That's how you say it, and it's female pigs, yes.
Sow. Okay, thank you. I'm so ignorant with so many things. And 2 huge boars with long tusks. Interesting. That's a lot. That's a lot to deal with. I complain about my situation. I don't have it that bad. Daylight savings time is like cutting off the bottom of your sweater and sewing it onto the top of your sweater. It's still the same length. Baby girl. That is true. It's dumb. It's very dumb. Not a fan at all. Ruth said, I wanted to order ready to lay chicken pullers, but they're $20 each. Pullets. Okay. We're starting off strong with me having no idea what anybody's talking about. So what the hell are pullets? Ready to lay chicken pullets.
That one I do not know.
Is ready to lay. Hens. Okay. Okay. That makes sense. Hens ready to lay eggs. $20 seems reasonable for that. If you think about the cost of eggs at the moment, I don't know where it is where you live, but they're relatively expensive where we are in the Chicagoland area. $20 a pop, I'd be down for. That seems fair. So they raise the chicks until they're ready to make golden nuggets. Yeah, I don't know. That seems like a steal. Almost $20. the best we got where we're at is like you can go to Tractor Supply and buy little baby chicks for like they're like $4.50 or something. I've been very tempted to do it on several occasions, but I have not broken, thank God. It's the last thing we need. The last thing we need. But boy, would I love to have a tiny little chip with a heat lamp, just like in the office here. It'd be fantastic. But I don't have the bandwidth for baby chicks at the moment. Being responsible. Bruce said, I guess I might invest 240 for a dozen so I can become a millionaire. Right, like if you're gonna do it, now's the time. Ruth's Golden Nuggets, LLC. We can help you get this all set up. We'll make you a nice fancy website. We got you. Let's go. Let's go. We will be equity partners, Kat and I. We could make this a reality. Kat said, you're going to be real mad when I decide I need chaos within my chaos and bring home BB chicks. I'll be not mad until like it wears off. You know, the newness of it wears off. And then yeah, I'll be mad, probably. Then I will probably be mad. All right, is Patricia here? Wasn't this like specifically requested by Patricia and she's just going to dog on us?
Ironically, she had to go to a concert, so.
Oh, well, it better be a good concert. Do you know what it was?
It's ABBA, so highly divisive.
ABBA. This is like not starting strong with me knowing what people are talking about. Jesus Christ. All 4 ABBA members reunite to be knighted at ceremony in Sweden. I'm not going to play a song because YouTube will do, I'm sure it's a copyright strike.
Dancing Queen was their most famous song, so you've got to have heard that.
Wait, what? They're alive? When was Dancing Queen? That was like the 70s.
Yeah.
Didn't they start? I thought they were like from before that, though. I guess not. They look young in the 70s. I had a very different picture of who this band was.
They're probably in their 60s, 70s, maybe.
Yeah, that's nothing. I mean, the Rolling Stones are still playing. Interesting. Okay. Well, I guess that's all right. Like, if you're going to go do it, I suppose. Why are they controversial?
Oh, because people either hate them or love them.
Okay. For like good reason or just like normal either love or hate music?
No, because, you know, tribalism, etc.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, I'm not going to lie, bro. Like Dancing Queen, it's a damn good song. It's a real...
I know.
It's a damn good song. Like, it's hard to get away from that.
Like, I'm a metalhead, but I can appreciate that stuff.
Yeah. No, well, good for her. That ought to be fun. The chick... I'm starting to get aggravated. Adorns? The chicks are adorns? Or is this adorbs? Okay. All right. Thank God. She corrected. I thought there was another word I didn't know. They had 500 chicks for sale at the feed store last week. So cute. I swooned. David, how much are 500 chicks? What is the price? I don't know where you are and you don't have to put it, but I'm curious. We are $4.50 per chick. At least the last time I went. Which is probably not accurate anymore, actually, now that I think about it, because it was months ago. It's like people who love Creed and those who despise them. What's the other one? Nickelback. I remember as a young child, everybody liked Nickelback, and then all of a sudden Nickelback was gay. And I did not at all get the memo that they had turned gay or become gay or however you want to say it. I didn't know. And then I realized, oh, they're gay. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, not everybody. I knew from the get-go.
That they were gay?
Yes, sir.
Wait, nobody in that band's actually like homosexual, are they?
I don't believe so. No, they're just Canadian.
Okay. They had a few good songs, though, right? I don't remember. What are some Nickelback? I don't know. We don't need to waste time on this. I don't remember. I feel like they had some good stuff, though, in the very beginning. And then I just knew at some point it just became totally unacceptable to not talk shit the minute Nickelback came on. Due to inflation, Nickelback is now a dime back. Ugh. Jesus God. Okay. All right. Philosophy and stuff. So philosophy versus theology, kind of. It's not a great tie. It's not accurate. This is predominantly about philosophy. At the very end, I kind of tie it into theology in case people don't really understand the difference, because there certainly is a difference, but it's minor. It's minor, but it's important, I guess I would say. Immanuel Kant, however you want to say it. Really, really good stuff if you ever have some time. But a quote here says, experience without theory is blind, but theory without experience is mere intellectual play. And it encompasses one of the beautiful aspects of philosophy, that mindset, I suppose. So what be philosophy? Philosophy is the study of fundamental questions about existence, about knowledge, about truth, morality, reason, and human nature. It is a perfect quote. I love it. This is like, I'm a total geek and weirdo, and I guess a girl to some degree, where like I have notes in my phone of just quotes, and I frequently review them because it helps me frame things differently. If that makes me an idiot, I don't know. It changes my perspective on a daily basis. Otherwise, I get lost in the sauce, man. I get lost in the day-to-day BS, and I frame things poorly. But when I read things like this, it's perfect. Experience without theory is blind, but theory without experience is mere intellectual play. It's absolute truth. It's total truth. And it's easy to lose that framing if you're not reminded of it. At least it is for me. But it's the questions about everything, basically. Existence, knowledge, truth, morality, reason, and then human nature. If you're being honest, if you've ever watched like sorry, the music makes me want to jump off a bridge. If you ever watch atheists or secularists debating Christians, what it really is at the core of it is philosophy versus theology. Just the terminology isn't used, but that's actually what is happening, because you have somebody who's arguing for either existence, knowledge, truth, morality, reason, or human nature, just minus God. And theology is the exact same thing: existence, knowledge, truth, morality, reason, and human nature, plus God. That's the argument. And we get lost in the minutia of it when there's really just that one key difference. It seeks to understand the principles.
Wouldn't God just be applying a cause to that pattern of philosophy? Like, philosophy is trying to recognize a pattern,
Right.
and theology is applying a cause to the pattern.
I think you could say in the vast majority of circumstances, yes. I think you could
grounding the whole thing, right?
say that again. You cut out.
I said theology is just grounding the whole thing.
Yeah, I guess in a sense you could say that. Yeah, you're tying it to something. I guess like an obvious example would be the origin of the universe, or the origin of just this world. Is from the philosophical perspective, you have no choice but to infinitely regress to the point of unexplainable. Whereas from like a theological perspective, you still infinitely regress, but you infinitely regress to something concrete, which would be God. Whereas from the atheist perspective, you infinitely regress to nothing. So you either admit, well, everything came from nothing, which violates all kinds of belief systems for atheists, or you admit something caused it and we just don't know. And Christians or religious people choose to call it God. But yeah, I think that's a fair way to look at it. Texas. Oh, okay. Texas, I didn't ask the price to stop myself from buying all of them. Next time you go, David, pay attention because I'm curious. David said 50 cent is now $50. The inflation jokes. It eases the pain of the reality of how broke we all are. But that's really it. So it seeks to understand the principles that govern reality. Human thought and human experience through logic, critical thinking, and at the end of the day is a lot of argumentation. It's a lot of people arguing about things or debating or having conversations depending on the specific context. Philosophy is often divided into several branches. And this is when you're not quite to the minutia yet, but you're beginning to split and travel down the roads that will lead to minutia, in my opinion. totally just my opinion. You have like metaphysics, the study of reality, existence, and what it means for something to be, which again, from a theological perspective, we have answers to that, or at least ideas about that at the end of our regression are somewhat concrete. Epistemology, the study of knowledge, belief, and how we come to understand the truth. I'd argue those are pretty similar between philosophy and theological perspective. Then you have ethics, which has been a really, really popular one forever, but certainly over the past handful of years with everything going on in culture and blah, 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 ethics has kind of blown up a bit. This would be the study of morality, right and wrong, and how people should live. So talking about things like capitalism and communism and all of that stuff that has become very popular. And Marx actually is involved in all of this too, that we'll get to later. But and I assume with all of you, you know who Marx is. Logic, the study of reasoning, and also argumentation, because it's where it always leads. Aesthetics, the study of beauty, art, and taste, certainly a smaller sect of philosophy, but certainly prominent still. And then you have political philosophy, the study of government, justice, and rights. I'd make a pretty dramatic argument that some of these could be tied together. Like you could certainly tie ethics and political philosophy together, because political philosophy is largely contingent upon ethical philosophy. But you go down a more specific route, I suppose, if you go straight to the political philosophical conversation. When can I show you femininity within the Godhead through the Holy Bible? Yeah, whenever you want. Discord is free, my friend. There's a link at the top of the chat there. We're all super interested, and we're not being sarcastic. At least I'm not. I'm genuinely curious with what you were talking about the other day. I would love to see it. And Discord, you have unlimited space and a bunch of people that would certainly jump in on the conversation. I'm super curious, so I hope you hop in there and do it. The history of the discipline, because to me it matters. Because just like theology and Christianity, we often get led astray if we don't understand where we came from. Meister, do exactly what you would do if you felt most secure. It's just another one that I really like. One of those ones that just kind of, as the kids would say, just hits different. Do exactly what you would do if you felt most secure, because most people live in fear. And so we behave based out of fear. Ancient philosophy, 600 BC to 500 AD. Big period. This period laid the foundation for what would become, and what already was, Western and Eastern philosophical traditions. You have the pre-Socratic philosophers, probably the most famous, most talked about, at least right in that time range, cutting off at 400 BC. Early Greek thinkers like Thales, Heraclitus, and Pythagoras, focusing on explaining the natural world through reason rather than mythology. This was really big, especially from like our Christian perspective, because this diverted from us. So whereas we as Christians, our peeps back in the day, stuck with what would be considered mythology, and I don't think anybody here would get offended, but most Christians would. You could say that's what it is, because that was the perception, at least, is that Christianity and most other religions, all of them, were forms of mythology. This was an attempt in the early ancient world to shift away from the mythology and into more of the rational, logical, can we see it, can we feel it, can we experience it, concept of trying to understand the world around them. Then you had classical Greek philosophy between 400 and 300 BC. This is Socrates, name everybody knows, emphasized ethics and questioning. Plato explored ideal forms and political philosophy, and Aristotle developed logic, science, and ethics. All three names that probably literally anybody on the planet knows. Then you had Hellenistic and Roman philosophy between 300 BC and 500 AD. Schools like Stoicism, big fan. Seneca, Marcus Aurelius. This is when like the more organized form of skepticism became a prominent thing. You already had it. It just wasn't really a group. It didn't seem to be a group. It didn't seem to be labeled. It wasn't something people were really like treating as a discipline. This is when that kind of became a discipline, where being a skeptic was a thing. It was a group you could belong to. It was a social thing. And it was a way of thinking. Whereas prior to that, you had skeptics. It just wasn't a thing. There was no label. There was no group mentality around it. This is when that kind of began to shift. So they were focusing on practical wisdom and personal well-being. And that's really the basis of Stoicism. Ruth said, I like Stoicism. I'm a big fan. Stoic principles dramatically changed my personal life as I went through the early sections of adulthood. And I attribute much of who I am today from a lot of that teaching. So I'm a real big fan. I have a lot of respect for it. Medieval philosophy between 500 and 1500 AD. This would be dominated by religious thought, particularly obviously Christian, but also Islam and Judaism, all stemming from obviously the Abrahamic thought and belief. You had Christian scholasticism. Thinkers like Augustine, a name everybody knows, Thomas Aquinas, same thing. They sought to reconcile faith and reason. So you first had mostly people who believed in some kind of mythology. Then you had that kind of divert. And you had this logic and reason over the mythology. In that diversion, at some point, they tried to come back together. And so you have people like Thomas Aquinas and Augustine who then brought their mythology, we'll call it, but again, I don't mean to like offend any of us because I believe these things too, but they brought that back and we're like, okay, well, why can't these things coexist? Why can't we put an emphasis on reason and logic and also believe the things that we believe? And I think there's some obvious contradictions in some sense, but you could certainly iron them out with enough time. Islamic and Jewish philosophy. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Avicenna, I wasn't familiar. And Averroes also wasn't familiar prior to doing this. But they had integrated Aristotle with Islamic thought, which I found to be pretty interesting, actually, because of some of what I understand about the Islamic thought process. While another name I wasn't familiar with, but Maimonides? I don't know. It's the M1. Maimonides. Not familiar with it, but they did the same thing with Judaism. Interesting. Watching these people try to blend.
Maimonides.
Say it again.
Maimonides.
Do you know anything about?
Not offhand, no.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't. So the Islamic and the Jewish were the things I had never looked at. So I gathered some brief stuff and I read a very small bit about it. The Christian stuff, obviously, I've got a bit, but this was all new to me. But it was interesting. It was interesting to see. Watching Christians merge with philosophy is interesting enough, but then watching something like Islam merge with it was even more interesting. And then Judaism is just kind of fun because it's very similar to Christianity. But a lot of the names I wasn't familiar with.
Yeah, I think Esmel's right. I think he was early Jewish mysticism, if I remember right.
That would make
like proto Kabbalah, like before Kabbalah.
Oh, really?
I'd have to look it up. Yeah.
Okay, Esmo said 700-ish. Well, that makes sense. So this was between 500 and 1500. Do you know anything else, Esmo, out of curiosity? Because again, I do not. So if you have anything, I would love for that to be added. Yeah. And then the Renaissance and early modern philosophy between 1500 and 1800, you had a revival of the classical ideas and the rise of what would be later called humanism, science and individualism. Renaissance humanism. Thinkers like Erasmus emphasized human potential and reason. It's a lot of the same stuff being recycled over and over, but being basically just expressed in a different way in a lot of cases. Scientific revolution and rationalism. Descartes, I think, therefore I am, became very obviously famous. But they also brought in other just ideas of reason and metaphysics, and it became kind of pumped up culturally and socially. Go said mythology just means story. Most people hear the word and think it means fake. Right. I think most people think of it and they hear like fairies and dragons and stuff like that. And it's like the heretic thing. It's just not what the word means. It's what we've kind of forced it to express socially. Esmo said 1150 CE Spanish Jewish stuff. So off by 400 years. Interesting. 1150. Ruth said I used to think that way. I definitely did. That was something I had to get out of. I still do stuff like that, though. There are still things I get stuck on like that, and I know better. Empiricism, which is always fun. In Locke, Berkeley, and Hume, they argued that knowledge comes from experience, which was like that first quote that we talked about there. Experience became written about often, and the importance of experience. Otherwise, you are spinning your wheels, I guess would be the pro-social way of saying it. Then moving forward, 1700 to 1800s, Enlightenment and political philosophy, which makes sense with a lot of stuff that was going on. We got to shift towards reason, democracy, and human rights. Again, when you think about all the stuff that was going on at the time, it makes a lot of sense. Christian philosophy, Immanuel Kant, which was the first quote that we had, sought to bridge rationalism and empiricism, emphasizing morality and human autonomy. And a lot of these words, the buzzwords, came into being, basically. But we had the exploration of government, rights in general for people, governmental rights, freedom. What is that actually? And how did any of these things influence what was modern democracy? And we still see that right now. Like, that's still a conversation right now. Go said, I've never been in a plane crash, but somehow I know I don't want to be. It's true. The experience thing, it's not required. Right, but there's certainly something to actually experiencing something, I think. But there are
a layer. It's just one layer out of many layers of knowing. So it's not the end all be all, and they were arguing for it as if it were the end all be all.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's why they're wrong.
Certainly not. In that perspective, how many layers, or is it circumstantial? Like in the idea of knowing,
there's probably a set number, but like we'd have to sit here and go over it all. I don't know. I just know there's more than one.
That would be an interesting conversation, actually. Patricia, if you watch this later, this is actually a really, really good example of really all that philosophy is. So you presented an idea, and then the concept of layers surrounding that idea. That's philosophy. Like that would then be a 5-hour or 30-year conversation of trying to distinguish what the layers are, why they matter, are they relevant, and welcome to philosophy. That's an interesting question, though. It's like, how many layers really are there? And is it set or is it circumstantial? Are some things less layered than other things, or are all things equally layered?
Do you think it's probably set? I think logic is one layer, and logic is just like, it's kind of like Plato's forms, where ideas have shapes, and logic is just understanding where an idea fits into the whole.
Mm-hmm.
And a whole's like understanding. So like, yeah, every idea is a shape, and logic is just knowing where to place those ideas so that they resolve without being illogical. That's what illogical is. It's like trying to put a square peg into a round hole.
Right. It's interesting.
So yeah, logic would be a layer. Experience is a layer. There's probably other stuff I'm not thinking of, but those are the two main ones right off the top.
What would you work perception in as a layer, or would you pull that?
Certainly. I mean, we're subjective beings, so perception has to be in there somewhere.
So then the layers, I think you can make an argument that, it'd be at least circumstantial to the individual. But you're saying regardless of the individual, regardless of the perception or the individuality of them or how their brain functions or anything, no matter what, there is objectively this set number of layers that is required for understanding.
I think perception could be seen as like the third layer on top of logic and experience, because people's perception comes from their logic, their or ability to logic and experience. I don't
Mm.
think perception just like arrives in your mind. I think you have to live through things and think about things, and that combination is perception.
You think intelligence or I don't know how to say it, but spiritual awakeness or anything like that plays a part in the layer concept, or does it not matter? No matter where you are on any of those spectrums, this is the process period for understanding.
I think spiritual awakeness has a lot to do with the Platonic forms.
Okay.
Logic. Like if you can't see how things fit, then your spiritual, like, I think spirit means idea. You're not going to see where those things fit. And some people don't even want to admit that there is shapes that fit into holes,
True.
because
Yeah.
that would mean there's objective reality.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. You can't
There's a
argue.
reason a triangle is not a rectangle and vice versa.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
Mm.
definitions require borders. Like definitions are borders, and for some people, they don't want to see that there are borders and definitions. That's why everything is fluid and nothing means anything. And I don't know. I just don't agree with that.
No, I mean it's a breakdown of reality. And for anybody who's not privy to what Ghost brought up, Platonic forms. So here you go. A philosophical theory by Plato that suggests that the physical world is less real than the realm of forms. The theory is also known as the theory of ideas, Platonic idealism, or Platonic realism. Plato believed that forms are perfect, abstract, unchanging, divine, and intelligible, but imperceptible. He believed that forms and the physical realm interact with each other. He believed that forms are more real than the physical world. That's Plato's theory of forms.
What he calls forms, I call laws. It's the
Right.
same thing.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
And I always ask, like, atheists or whatever, I always ask them, where do the laws come from? Because everything else you believe in relies on those laws being constant and ever present. So what are they and where do they come from, and do they evolve? And I never get an answer.
No, never. Never. It's I've said it before, but man, like the atheist community, I don't know, the skeptic community has gotten so depressing. It's a travesty, honestly, because I don't feel like atheists have gotten dumber or have gotten so small that only the dumb are there. Meaning, I don't think they like just started to believe in God and therefore the community shrunk just to the idiots. I just feel like everybody in general has gotten dumber, and it's very sad to watch. I used to have some of the smartest, most just wild and long conversations I've ever had in my life were with atheists over the internet, and I have not had one in many years.
I think they've become more insulated and they wall themselves off into like communities. That's why they don't interact with anyone that has different ideas than them. And that makes them dumber, because it's just like you're not mixing in new genetics. You're just kind of incestually talking with each other. And the offspring of that is just dumber ideas.
For sure. For sure.
Same bad talking points since when I was an atheist. They haven't come up with anything new. So like everything's pretty much just people see the holes in it.
Oh, for sure. I guess
And not just to pick on atheists, but like Christians do the same incestuous stuff where they wall themselves off and they never add anything new. So like
yes,
they're the same, they're just inverted.
that's what I was gonna say. It's like, to be fair, we're doing the exact same stuff. But I would say, some Christians in the limelight, at least, seem to have gotten better at how they express it, and there's less of this like, I want to prove to an atheist that God is real, so I will use the Bible, the book that they view no validity in, as my source to prove that God is real. I see less of that. And I see more Christians, at least like popular ones, trying to actually go at it philosophically and go at it from the actual history. Less of the like, well, I had a dream once, and so God has to be real. I don't see as much of that, which is nice. But both sides do the same stuff. It's people going in circles. S. Mill said, I believe Plato or a follower, though the demiurge used the forms to make the physical world, but it came out inferior to the forms, and that's why it is less real and permanent. Okay, hold on, one more time. I believe Plato or a follower thought the demiurge used the forms to make the physical world, but it came out inferior to the forms, and that's why it is less real and permanent. Some Christian groups have come up with some pretty wacky stuff in isolation. Well, that is extremely true. But your first comment is very interesting. That's very interesting. That's a ponder-worthy theory that I have certainly never thought about. Interesting. Here's another question, though, was Plato a real person? Because there's debate about that. Same with Socrates, or perhaps maybe I'm getting it wrong. I don't quite remember. One of them, Aristotle, Socrates, or Plato. There's a decently sized group of people who don't believe they were a real individual. And now I don't remember. It's going to drive me insane. So I'll figure that out. But it was really, I listened to something about it once, and it was very
Would it even
interesting.
matter as long as we understand the ideas that were attributed to them?
Not at all. Not at all. But just similar to like old biblical stuff, I still feel the context is important, or at the very least helpful. If you know something was written by a wacko, if it's good, is it still valuable? Yeah. I mean, at the end of it, yeah. I think people just have a harder time swallowing it.
Ted Kaczynski wasn't completely wrong.
It's true. It's a valid point.
My opinion.
It's a valid point. It's the old, well, I guess I won't say that. But yeah, there have been evil people in history who have said valid things. It's certainly true.
Yeah, I think we suffer from this like idea that villains are just these cartoonish 100% pure evil people, and it's never that easy. Like bad people can have good ideas and vice versa.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever that easy. And one of the wild things is like a lot of times somebody who ends up being evil and not good for society, in terms of like normal day-to-day living, a lot of those people seem to have done things that dramatically improved society. And sometimes like for long periods of history, people have benefited or benefit from the musings of a crazy or delusional man. It's complex. People are complex. I don't think anybody is all bad or all good. Just statistically, it's very unlikely that any human ever that's existed is all good or all bad. It's that would be such an impossibility, I think. As Mill said, Plato never wrote anything, so that's the dilemma. True. I'm not sure if it's the same, if the same is true for Socrates and Aristotle. Yeah, wasn't Plato, it was all people after that wrote, similar to like Jesus. Jesus never wrote anything. Everything was written about him. I know Plato was the same. I want to say the other two. No, I feel like one of them wrote, actually. And I want to say Socrates, but I can't with confidence. I don't remember. But it wasn't unusual. Like, that was normal.
Yeah, I don't know either. I think Aristotle wrote, but now I gotta go back and look. I'm pretty sure.
If I remember correctly, Pythagoras didn't write anything. I'm pretty sure about that one. His teachings weren't written down.
Socrates did not. And let's see, Aristotle. Yes, so that's the one. Aristotle's the one who actually wrote.
Yeah, I think these guys just stood around and dropped wisdom on people, and then the students would just write it down as they went.
Yeah, that is how it appears. And that was just kind of the way of the world for a long time. Oh God, Kat brought this up the other day. Fun fact: Shakespeare probably wasn't real. You haven't shown me what made you think that.
I think Shakespeare was Sir Francis Bacon, but who knows?
I don't know any of this at all. I've read a lot of Shakespeare. I mean, it's good. I don't know the conspiracies though, or the thought. I don't know. If any of it is actually interesting, then send me something. You and Kat.
I think it's kind of pointless. It's just
Okay.
fun.
That's kind of how I see it. If it ended up being like an interesting conspiracy where we learn something that is valuable, or even just entertainment value, because it's that crazy what the actual story is. Like the typing monkeys actually wrote Shakespeare, and this was all a ruse. That'd be interesting, but
That would be way more cool than Francis Bacon.
yeah, Kat, you gotta show me. I'm curious at least what you're talking about. I had never heard any theory other than that. All right, I mean, cut me off at any point, but 19th century philosophy, so the 1800s to the 1900s. We had a new movement emerging in response to modernity, science, and society. Hegelian idealism. Hegel proposed that history unfolds through dialectic progress. Then you had existentialism and nihilism. I can never say his name right, and it shouldn't surprise anybody. I'm not even going to try. But him and Nietzsche question meaning, faith, and traditional values.
Kierkegaard and Nietzsche.
Kierkegaard. I'm going to forget.
Nihilism is the worst.
Yeah. I mean, it is. Yeah. It's become popular too, though. I feel like as of the past handful of years.
That's why it's the worst.
Yeah, fair.
Because it's being embodied by too many people, and we're seeing the effects.
Yeah, it is. I wonder if nihilism is kind of the underlying of the lack of the birth rate, the decline of the birth rate. If you boil it down, it seems like.
Yeah.
Yeah, you think so?
I mean, yeah, it's definitely an ingredient. It's the decline of everything because it's intellectual laziness, I think, mixed with like almost like a self-destructive tendency.
It's certainly self-destructive. I think a lot of it is subconsciously self-destructive. Like you have all these nihilistic millennials who are economically nihilists, geopolitically nihilist, and then you have them selfishly not realizing that they are causing their own destruction by being selfish. It's just not.
Yeah, it's like divine irony.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well said. It is like divine irony. Which leads right into this. Marxism and Karl Marx, which everybody has to have heard over the past handful of years, who critiqued capitalism and advocated for class struggle. This has seeped its way into many things in our modern United States of America. 20th and 21st century philosophy, a period of diverse schools of thought and challenges to tradition. Analytic philosophy. If you haven't caught on, a lot of it is just everything kind of said in a different way. It all boils down to the same crap. But you had analytic philosophy. You had Camus, I believe is how it's pronounced, but they had examined consciousness, which really, really boomed. We had, I believe it was like in the early 2000s, where the idea of consciousness became, I guess, mainstream in smaller circles, but we had like a bunch of TV shows come out. There were movies that talked about and explored consciousness more. And then when the internet really took off and message boards and all that stuff, consciousness got a scoop. And now I feel like consciousness is at least in the circles I roll in online, is a very commonly discussed thing. A lot of what I listen to has consciousness brought up. And this tie of consciousness to spirituality and consciousness to ration and consciousness to reason and all these things. And then obviously buckling it in with experience and then human freedom. But I believe it's Camus. That postmodernism and deconstruction, which is also talked about quite a bit, I feel like, today. for not the best reasons. There was a challenge to traditional structures, the idea or concept of truth, and then power dynamics. Mikkel, you missed 5 seconds on Karl Marx. And good stuff earlier, though, from Ghost and S-Mill, so you should roll it back later. Philosophy of mind and science. A couple other prominent thinkers began to produce, I guess you call them scholarly works, where they were exploring consciousness in depth, where artificial intelligence started to really become also a thing that was being talked about, and specifically how artificial intelligence would actually intermingle with the world, how it would intermingle with human consciousness, which again is at the height that it's ever been right now because of obvious reasons, and the nature of reality, which ties right into that too. I think today, probably the most hot button, and I would say the most important thing in the world at the moment in terms of philosophy are those three things, in my opinion: consciousness, artificial intelligence, or general artificial intelligence, and the nature of reality in general. Because as those things blend, I think it's going to dramatically change everything about our entire world. Everything is a construct unless you like it. Fair. Shouldn't be, but it is. Shouldn't be, but it is. Heraclitus.
Joe, before we move on,
yes.
Do you think AI could be seen as an egregore? Like a modern day egregore? Because artificial just means created.
Yeah, no, I think you can make that argument, yeah.
Because I kind of do. And I think artificial intelligence, like modern AI, is just like a new manifestation of what's already been happening for a long time.
Yeah. I can't remember who. There was something that I was reading maybe a year ago that was basically about that, trying to make the case for it. I think time will make that more clear, but I definitely am on that team, at least as of right now. Yeah.
Yeah, time will make it more clear for sure. I just kind of suspect that that's where it's going, and that's the pattern that it fits in.
Yeah, no, I think there's a really good case for it. S. Mill said, which book of Lord of the Rings was egregore in? Here, I guess, to be fair,
I don't know, the Silmarillion?
I don't know Lord of the Rings. For anybody who doesn't know, here's your definition: a concept in Western esotericism that refers to a non-physical entity or thought form created by the collective thoughts, emotions, and intentions of a group of people. The probably more common way you've heard it expressed, which I think is a fair way, is like the hive mind. So I feel like that's kind of the media term for basically this idea, is the hive mind, where all these things get tied together. If anybody's tech savvy and you know what IoT is, Internet of Things, it's essentially that, but it's just this interconnectivity. But in this case, this would be created by collective thoughts, emotions, intentions, by people. But it's the same thing. I think the interesting thing is that like this is already done. It's already been done. Everything is already connected for people. What's happening now is it's all, my favorite word, is being aggregated. And it's being aggregated extremely quickly. And then it's learning on aggregate how to function like that. And I'm terribly afraid of AI, but I use it all the time. In its current form, I think it's harmless for the most part. But I don't think it'll stay harmless. I think there will be a threshold that will cross. And it will potentially be very bad. But I think we're far away from that, personally. I'm not a nihilist with it currently. At some point I will be, though. Time will tell. Heraclitus. No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river, and he's not the same man. I heard cute little Timmy Pool actually say this quote like a week or something ago. And I think it's just because I have ill feelings toward that man, and I don't know why. I think it's because he's rude. He interrupts people all the time, and it drives me a little bit insane. But he said this quote, and I'm like, damn, way to go, boy, because that's a good one. No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and he is not the same man. Beautiful quote. Again, if that type of stuff doesn't move you, then I don't know how you function in life. Ancient philosophers. Now, so the people. Who were some of the people? And most of these names, I think, will at least ring some kind of a bell. Several we've obviously already talked about. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. Famous works, The Republic, from Socrates. The story, at least, is that Aristotle was a student of Plato. And then you had Confucius between 551 and 479, who was a Chinese philosopher. Zeno, who founded, so they say, Stoicism, and everything kind of branched from there. I feel like Zeno isn't really talked about much. In terms of Stoicism, the next one is probably going to ring the bell, and that would be Marcus Aurelius, who really obviously blew up, and young men really took to a lot of his writing, myself included, because it's very good. But he was a Roman emperor and a Stoic philosopher, and he wrote the most famous thing that he wrote was Meditations, or that was wrote for him, realistically, probably. Thought forms, question mark. Go said ideological framework. That's what I think thought form means. Yeah, I would agree with that. What is that creature that Jewish people can think into existence out of dirt? Golem? What? Is this Lord of the Rings stuff? Geoffrey said, I can't get on Discord to save my life. Bro, do you have StreamYard? No. We do not use the StreamYard. I am ghetto and use OBS. I think that's the ghetto one, at least. It's the open source one. We don't pay for fancy stuff. With the $3.50 that YouTube pays out, we don't have fancy stuff. Sorry, man. Discord it works. If you need help, I'm sure I can help you offline. Find me on social media somewhere. It's all the same name. So find me somewhere else and I can help. Or send it to me on social media. Whatever. And then I can put it in Discord. So, because I'm sure Ghost and other people would want to read it too. But send it to me somewhere else. We leave behind 1,000 corpses of ourselves in our life. I like that. Depending on how much we moisturize our skin. The answer is never. Do men exfoliate? Can somebody answer this for me? I'm being told I need to exfoliate, and there's no chance in hell. Ever. I also don't fully understand what it means. Does it just mean scrub yourself really hard? Because it
means get that dead skin, man.
Well, I do that then. Like, I feel like it's a.
Then you're good.
Okay, then I guess I exfoliate. It just sounds real gay. But
True.
I've just been conditioned to believe that, I suppose. Is Golem with 2 L's different than Golem with 1 L? Or is this the same thing? It's probably a really stupid question. Is it spelled with 2 L's? I thought it was spelled with 1 L. So maybe he's correcting. I don't have any idea. I don't know, dude. Is Golem the little like pointy ears elf guy, whatever he is?
No, that's Gollum from Lord of the Rings. Completely different.
Oh, okay. I thought that's what you guys were talking about.
No, the Golem in Jewish mysticism. It's like a little artificial intelligence.
Okay, because he had right before that said which book of Lord of the Rings was Egregor in. So my mind was still there. I'm with you now. I just can't spell, and the one from the books confuses me. Okay, well, whatever.
Fair enough. It's a similar name, but completely different concepts. I don't know why he chose that.
Interesting. Yeah, I still gotta watch that. It just reminded me. Medieval philosophers, 500 to 1500 AD. Probably the most famous in terms of like Christian people. Augustine of Hippo, Christian philosopher who combined Platonic thought, or Platonic thought with theology. This was, I guess we talked about it earlier, but everything started very religious. Everything kind of branched. So then you had the religious and you had the more skeptic. And then a lot of the religious people, not a lot, a few of the religious people really tried to bridge the gap again and kind of bring it all together. Augustine was one. Thomas Aquinas was one. There were a handful of very prominent ones. And I would argue that some of the earlier theologians kind of did it in a general sense. The Origins, Tertullian, those guys, I get those vibes. But it's not really talked about. So these guys were talked about. Thomas Aquinas was a Catholic theologian who synthesized Aristotle's philosophy with Christianity. And this was a famous thing. This became it's very interesting. It's dry, but if you're in the mood for something very academic and dry and need to fall asleep, it's good stuff. It's very interesting if you like this kind of thing. If it's not, then for the love of God, don't read it because it is very, very dry. Renaissance and Enlightenment philosophers, 1500 to 1800s. Immanuel Kant, we talked about a little bit. Voltaire, John Locke, David Hume. These are relatively well-known names. They're worth looking up if you care to learn more. We've used a couple for quotes so far here, but it's a lot of the same, just being expressed in different ways. 19th century philosophers continues on. You had Hegel, you had Karl Marx, you had Nietzsche, you had, I guess, the one Friedrich, if he's German, right? This is where the God is dead thing came from. And I don't know about y'all, but when I guess it was between like 2011 and 2014, when the God is not dead became like a really famous Christian culture thing. And there were songs written about it, like "My God is not dead, he's surely alive." All these songs, all these like articles and writings, all of Christian culture had like boomed for some reason around this answering to Friedrich, who said God is dead. It was like what a terrible quote to have attributed like that. Of all the work he did, that's the one thing that gets tacked on his gravestone. But Christianity, for whatever reason, around 2011, kind of flipped it and did this huge, weird cultural response to it. As Bill said, Augustine was influenced from years of being a Mendean. Mikhail said, remember what we were discussing about Adam equals the serpent? Oh, I feel like I missed something. We're snakes like, then shedding our skin goes. Is shedding your skin exfoliating?
We are exfoliating all of our bad qualities. That's what sanctification is.
It's true. It's true. I don't like it, but it's true. Plate tectonic.
Sanctification is gay.
Eve equals serpent. Same word in Hebrew versus Aramaic. Adam named Eve a serpent. Wait. That's not true. Is it? You're so on your stuff that you're making me second guess myself.
I've never heard that. I want to see more.
Yeah, so are you saying Eve is serpent in Hebrew and Aramaic, or in Aramaic and not Hebrew? I'd love to see whatever that video is, yeah. Because I feel like I did Eve at some point, and I don't recall that being the outcome. But I'm very open to being wrong. Let me pull up both just out of curiosity here, though. So, Eve comes from the Hebrew name Shava or Shaba, which is derived from the root Shaya, meaning to live or to give life. This reflects Eve's role in the biblical account as the mother of the living. So in Hebrew, Eve or Shavah essentially means life or living, a fitting name for the first woman in the biblical narrative. That sounds more in line with what I remember. Because there was also something, I'm really trying to remember what it was. Something in the Hebrew having to do with Eve's name. Oh, it's going to drive me crazy. But it had to do with like the roles. The roles of men and the roles of women and what Eve was to Adam. I'll have to find it. And then in Aramaic, the name Eve likely rendered essentially the same. Shavah, and then there's an alternative spelling that is different from the Hebrew. But like its Hebrew counterpart, it is derived from a root meaning to live or life giver, which makes a lot of sense. For me, especially because I take none of that book literal. So if it is a story and Eve becomes the mother of humanity, life giver makes a lot of sense in terms of what her name would be. It says Aramaic and Hebrew are closely related languages, so the meaning remains essentially the same. Eve signifies life or living. This is fitting as Eve is called the mother of all living things in Genesis 3:20. I'll watch whatever video you got.
Hey, Joe?
Yeah.
If I run this through my model, I think snakes and electricity are intimately related, and we all have electricity in us, and we all rely on electricity to live. So could they have been getting at something like that? I don't know. But that's what I thought of.
I gotta sit on that. Would that be any different with any other creature, though?
What do you mean?
Maybe I misunderstood. But so if the same
The
thing,
mother of all living,
right?
and this is like an electromagnetic universe. So nothing can live without electricity.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. No, I think it checks
That's
out.
just where my mind went. I mean, I don't know how accurate it is, but it makes sense according to the pattern, at least.
And does that relate to the snake or serpent term for her name?
I don't know. Well, number one, it's Hebrew and Aramaic. So you're comparing two languages. Granted, they are similar languages, but they are different languages. Um, so I'm not sure. This is the first time I'm hearing about the snake being Heva. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I've got,
Because in Hebrew it's Nakash.
Eve.
No, serpent.
Okay, yeah.
Eve is Heva.
Right. And so I pulled, looks like 7 different sources, and they're all saying the same thing. And nobody's even giving like an alternate for serpent. And there's an Aramaic, not Hebrew. So Esmo said Eve is, I don't know how to say it. Ghost said it well. Whatever the word. Heva. In Hebrew, and the snake is Heva in Aramaic. Whatever. Show the video because I'm curious, but I can't find any sources that say that. But I'm super interested. And I'm always open to being slapped in the face with being wrong. I've become very used to that.
To me, it seems like possibly some Aramaic thinker associated the two, and that's the origin of it. Yeah, go ahead, man.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I can pull this up here. Posted the video in the chat there. It's like a couple minutes long. I don't know if you want to waste time with it. Okay, so why is there a snake in the Garden of Eden? Maybe because in Hebrew, Eve, which is Shava in Hebrew, and life, Chaya, sounds similar. And in Aramaic, snake, Chava, and life, Chaya, sound similar. And the Hebrew name for Eve, Chava, and Aramaic name for snake, Chava, are the same. And the Israelite authors loved wordplay.
I mean, I could see it. Like this wouldn't surprise me at all. I'm just not able to find anything on it. But
The H with a dot under it is a CH sound. Or more like a...
Right.
So could it be some kind of like?
Well, it's just
Pun?
the whole thing that, you know, I mean, Hebrew started around like 1000 BC and Aramaic started around like 750 BC. So, I mean, Aramaic kind of came after it, but they were closely related and they were probably both around and closely related at the time when Genesis was written. So, they may have had like a little wink with the whole thing.
That's
but
kind of what I think, but who
I don't know.
knows?
Yeah, I mean, either way, it's interesting. It would not surprise me in the slightest. But then I guess take that to its argumentative conclusion. So what? Was it just wordplay for fun, or are they trying to imply or insinuate something?
Well, the thing, if you watch that video, I'll post it. The thing they wonder about, why they think that might be relevant, is because basically, you know, Adam and Eve, they eat the apple or fruit or whatever, and then they're God like gives them like all of these like curses, right? About what's going to happen, what their punishment is going to be for Adam and Eve and the snake. And then before they get kicked out, Adam decides to name Eve. And they're kind of like, well, why would Adam name Eve in the middle of the drama? It doesn't really make sense unless he was giving her a name that meant snake because he was mad at her. But that is something that some rabbis have said, but I don't know how much truth there is to it. They never use that word, Aramaic word for snake in the Bible. I mean, they always use shamash or whatever it is, and so it's not without its issues.
No, of course, but
it's an interesting thing.
It's an interesting thing.
So
to me, it sounds like a veiled commentary.
I mean, yeah. So this is originating from like midrashes, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If Mikhail hadn't said that Adam equals serpent, I never would have brought it up.
I mean, it's interesting. Funny. It's very interesting. So Genesis 3:20 is when Adam names Eve, and what the Bible says, like in the to be fair, the English Bibles say the man called his wife's name Eve because she was the mother of all living, which then makes sense for all of the obvious quick answers you get in terms of what the word means. It's interesting. It would be interesting to...
And when you think of snakes having immortality, that kind of life thing, kind of...
Yeah.
And shedding their skin all the time, making them seem like... they were kind of seen as like these sort of symbols of like immortality and life and things like that in like Egypt and...
Yeah, fair.
So I can see where those might have come from the same root.
That's true. It's interesting. Yeah, that's one I've never heard. What a
I'll post the video. You can see for yourself how crazy it sounds.
Yeah, but man, some of the craziest things have ended up, in my opinion, being true. So that's why I've ended up being the heretic that I am. So I'd be interested. Yeah, put it out there and I'll watch it because I did just realize I gotta roll. It's 8:10 for me, and I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. But that's interesting, dude. I want to watch the video, and then I want to see if I can pull some of these Jewish writings.
Say too much crazy stuff on in this group. So
yeah, no, it's good stuff. It's all stuff we appreciate.
That's kind of out there.
It's the best. It's the best. Burning one, shining one, coiling one, subtle one. Is it Nakash? Is that how you say that?
Yeah.
That's Hebrew for snake.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It's
yeah.
Hebrew for snake, but it's also Hebrew for those other words as well. So
Yeah. The
it's
Aramaic
compounding.
I just put in there. Oh, okay. Okay. Burning one, shining one, coiling one, subtle one. That's so linguistically brutal to then try to make sense of a lot of that. Like contextually, a lot of this is conflicting with how the term is used oftentimes in the Bible. And that's why it's such a shit show trying to read. Ghost, can we say that the serpent is an egregore? It's a good question.
I'd have to think about that. My first instinct is no, but I think the serpent is a prerequisite for egregores. It's like a foundation. It's the net. It's the matrix that allows for something else to exist.
Hmm.
I mean, you need electricity for everything.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say it is that, but it is the foundation of that, sure. But it's also the foundation of everything else.
Interesting. All right. Anybody burning desires, last words, whatever. I got to go to bed. We in case anybody was planning on doing game night, I blew it. So we got to pick Kat's mom up from the airport on Friday. So I posted another poll. And it looks like we might have a few people. So we might do game night on Saturday. If there's a few of us, I'm down. And then next Monday, and I hate to do this because it's going to be confusing, but we're going to move Tuesdays to Mondays indefinitely. So I apologize if anybody can't come, but the poll was very positive. So there will be no Tuesday streams anymore. It'll just jump up one day, every Monday. Tuesdays are going to become difficult for us. So I appreciate the flexibility. And then I will post a poll for next Tuesday. I'm sorry, for next Monday. I'm probably going to be the one who blows it. Next Monday. And I'll change that in the Discord events thing right when we get off. But anything else real quick? Otherwise, I'm going to sleep. This was good. This was fun. We didn't finish at all. But the things brought up were much more interesting than what I had. Because it makes sense.
We'll have
a
to
foundation.
do a philosophy 102.
Yeah, or at the very least, honestly, all that we really missed was the blending of philosophy and theology. So maybe we'll just jump into that. We missed the very end. Philosophy and theology. So we'll do that. We covered the boring historical stuff. But I think it's important to understand the difference. And I'd be interested to hear you kind of tear into some of these things. So I'll turn the philosophy and theology into a full deal. And then we'll hit it again.
Maybe we can go over like particular ones.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. So do like a very general overview, because I think I had like, obviously, what is theology, comparison between the two, a little breakdown of philosophy from that perspective, breakdown of theology from that perspective, and then just kind of very generalized from there, based on goal, method, scope, philosophy versus theology. But yeah, maybe we just do a very brief introduction and then just throw actual concepts out and try to break down specific concepts. That would be fun.
Sounds fun to me. But yeah,
Well,
I'm gonna head out, eat dinner. Take it easy, guys. Love
good
you.
deal. Love you. All right, guys. I am out. Have a lovely night. Thursday, Book of Giants and Enoch. S-Mill, was good to have you, man. Later, everybody.